Hello, Alan. Before we start, I think I should just do a basic introduction of who you are. And obviously, you're Alan Ryder of Adventures in Reality. You've just edited and published the Tales from the Ghost Town book as well.
Yeah, I'll copy here as well.
Yeah, exactly, about Coventry fanzines. Very nicely put together, if I say so myself, because I had a hand in this. But obviously, you're the main person behind this. But obviously, people know you from Adventures in Reality, the fanzine, the book that I published before last year, and also the fanzine, which this collects. So, and also the label. So you've got a few strings to your bow. And first, maybe a good place to start then would be to ask how you feel. How do you feel about the Tales from the Coventry book? Tales from the Ghost Town book. Now that it's actually out.
Well, I think it's no surprise, is it? Everyone loves to see something actually come out. I mean, this is fantastic to have it, because I've been working on this actually for quite a few years, longer than for the Adventures in Reality collection that came out last year. Was actually put together quite quickly. So you probably remember it was just kind of based on a Facebook conversation that we had, and then it kind of all sprang from there. But this one here, I was actually putting together before that, because it takes a long time to actually track people down. Fanzine editors, there's no compendium of them, there's no address list. You have to either know who they are, you ask friends of friends, you try and track them down. Some of them are still new, but it takes a while. And also collecting the fanzines together is not easy, because they're fragile. They're paper, photocopied things.
Absolutely.
They get trashed and thrown away and cleared out of lofts, and people don't keep them. So just to even collect together a few of them, and there was a lot of them, there's over 50 different ones over that period that was covered in the book, 79 to 85, takes quite a while to do. And then also what I wanted to do was not just to do a reprint or kind of a list type book that just says here's a big list and that's it, and it's very factual and very academic in some ways, which might please academia, but I don't think it's that interesting. I think it's more interesting to try and understand what it was like to do that, and the people that did it, the kind of stories, I guess, because that's the interesting thing for me is it's kind of it's things that are created from the street, isn't it? It's actually true punk, I guess, post-punk. For me, that's when the punk thing really took off, when people started to really genuinely do things themselves. No one's signing to CBS or Clash or whatever. They're doing stuff themselves. So it came a bit afterwards.
That's right. I agree with you on that as well. So obviously we'll focus on Tales from the Ghost Town at the moment, and I appreciate the fact that it did take you a long time to put this together, and it a lot of hard work tracking people down. How many of those fanzines did you have yourself? I mean, obviously, as you said, there's quite a number included in the book. Did you have physical copies still? Do you still have a collection of these fanzines, or did you have to track some of those down and scan them for inclusion?
Kind of yes and no. So yes, I had quite a few left. Obviously, I've got my own ones, Adventures in Reality, and some of the main ones like Alternative Sounds and things like that I was perhaps more close to. But some of the more obscure ones, then I didn't have all of them. But people have been very kind to either scan them in for me. Some people have actually given me their copies. They've sent me spares they have, or sometimes they've just given me their copies.
Right.
So,
okay.
Sorry, that's my phone pinging now.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
I realise that.
Onto silent. But it does take a while, because sometimes I only had one issue and there might have been 3 or 4 issues, and I wanted to get them all.
Yeah. But I think there were more people as well that you wanted to track down, weren't there? Were there some others? Others that were impossible.
It's incomplete. It's bound to be, isn't it? If I waited for every single thing, sorry, I'm going to turn this off. If I waited for every single, person, every single T to be crossed and I to be dotted, I'd still be doing it probably when I'm 6 foot under. So yeah, you had to stop somewhere. So
Yeah,
I thought
absolutely.
it came to a point where I got far enough. I got as far as I think I could get without just going in every decreasing circles.
Absolutely. And
But it's a pretty good collection, pretty comprehensive
great.
actually.
Yeah, I'm pleased that you agreed to me having a hand in it as well. And it's a nice book. It looks lovely. It reads well, and I think you've done a really good job in assembling it. So, are you pleased with it yourself?
I am. I love the kind of the format as well. It's a bit like the Beano annual list thing, the kind of with the hardback, which reminds me of that. And I guess that's appropriate because they're kind of graphic things, aren't they?
That's right.
And,
It does remind me of that. I used to get the Hotspur annual every year for Christmas. Yeah, it's a bit like that. But yeah,
I think the fact it's got you've got things scanned in, you can see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Buy your own copy, folks, and then you can see it properly. But the kind of format, like for those that are yet to get theirs, just no spoilers here, but basically what you've got is a set of a little intro, just to give it in context, then some interviews with the people, some of the editors that produce some of the fanzines that I've tracked down as far as Australia, to ask them about producing it, but also how it changed their kind of attitude towards life. And pretty much to a man, they were all men, I'm afraid, it had a big effect on them, so a lot of them have gone into kind of media, some of them are still doing music and things like that, but whatever they're doing, that kind of attitude went with them, I think, because it's creating stuff yourself basically.
That's right.
I think I said in another interview that fanzines are kind of the ultimate self-expression and freedom, because you don't rely upon anybody to give you permission to do stuff. So we're doing it on Zoom now. This is a Korean company, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Goes onto YouTube, which is Google, So we're all doing this stuff by permission of multinational companies who are collecting all their data on us while we're doing this and profiling us, etc. But when you're doing a fanzine, you write it yourself. You make all your spelling mistakes, doesn't matter. You put whatever you like in it, however rude you want to be to people, you can be. You print it yourself on a photocopier, or you just go and get somebody to print it. And I certainly experienced instances where some of the printers wouldn't print stuff because they didn't like it, so you just take it to another printer. So you can circumvent that. And then you sell it yourself through mail order or just physically at gigs and things. So you're in total control of every aspect of it yourself. It's just down to you. And that's pretty rare now to be able to do that. So e-zines are not the same, because they're distributed through corporate networks, basically through Google and through
right.
the internet.
Yeah. But this is why I have a problem.
It's great to do it
to a degree with what passes for independent or DIY culture now, because as you said, it exactly, you these people all depend on these huge crutches that that now exist. I'm not knocking those either, because it's made things easier for a lot of people. I think and because of that, it's kind of opened more doors, perhaps. But so I don't want to completely criticise it, but I do think what you were doing with the fanzines, and obviously I did it with mine as well. But it's from a time that's definitely never going to be repeated again. Is that how you feel? It's just gone, and it was a unique time.
It was that period, kind of end of the 70s to kind of mid to end of the 80s, I think. It was quite unique, because you had this everybody doing stuff on a quite small scale, but I think it was genuinely alternative. So a lot of the bands, bands like the Opeds and the Raincoats, and quite political, quite sort of angry in some ways bands, but not commercial really. Some very uncommercial stuff got sold in quite large quantities, and I don't think it would really happen so much now. I think you have to kind of compromise quite a lot. There's lots of really good stuff out there now, and it's very easy to distribute it and sell it through through Bandcamp and despite uploading in various formats. So again, I'm not knocking the ability to do that. This book really came about because we got back in touch through Facebook, really. So
so we can't.
The reason we're talking now is because of this. So we wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So it's not hypocritical. It's just, yes, it was a special time, I think, and it's good to document it because it will go. These things are often quite small quantities, quite ephemeral, fragile things that can be easily destroyed, and there aren't copies that exist elsewhere. So you need to capture them, which is why it's great. I think that you're doing your series of books where you're interviewing people. You've done the Ranelagh book, and you're doing one on Mark Perry, and you've done some things on grim humour and also Adventures in Reality, and the one on the Coventry fanzines that we're talking about. This actually, it captures those and makes them available to people in a format they never would be able to otherwise see these things.
I obviously that's the reason why I do all of this. So I think all of this needs preserving for as long as possible. It's obviously part of who we are, as well as you rightly said about the other fanzine writers that you collated, for the Tales book. So given all that, and just to get you talking more about your work here, how do you feel about Tales compared to the collection of Adventures in Reality now? How do you? Obviously, I've got a sealed copy here. I was too lazy to get my my open copy. It's buried under a pile of books. So, how do you feel about the Adventures compendium in comparison? So obviously, it's a different thing. It's your own baby. So.
Well, they both are in a way, but yeah, I mean, you're in luck. I've got an open copy here, so I'll save you having to take the shrink wrap off your stock copy. But yeah. I mean, obviously, it is. If you look, it's twice the size, really. So it's quite a chunky thing. But again, I was really pleased with this. Actually, this was fantastic because I never really expected, and I know you always get this question, did you ever expect? And because of course you don't expect that, when you did it, you've no idea. You just go from one to the other, don't you, from one issue to the next, and then you don't really think ahead any more than that. But I think the fact that I had the opportunity to firstly reprint it in full, but not just as a straight reprint, actually talk about how it evolved, what was behind it, and also all the other bits and bobs that are around these things that kind of get forgotten about. The badges, the flyers, the little posters that you make, all those little bits and bobs that actually form part of the kind of general environment and thing that you do. They're all part of it, and that's what's great to actually put it all together in one thing. And also there's a little section on the kind of techniques that we used to use, things like John Ball printing sets. People don't use those anymore. Letraset, I know some people are starting to use Letraset again now in art colleges.
Nostalgia.
It's a retro thing, but it was what you had to do to kind of make letters up when you ran out of them by putting things backwards and kind of cutting bits off them and inking them in and all that kind of stuff. And Pritt sticks and literal cut and paste. So all of that, I think, was important context to wrap around it. So what I'm hoping that people that get will see is that it's a book about doing a fanzine as opposed to just a book about a fanzine. It's trying to say this is what it was like in the 80s to do stuff on pretty much no money in little in Coventry, which is not London or anything. That's not the main kind of thing, and that's where the focus usually is on these things, and to try and just do something which was just basically trying to do something a little bit different, so a little bit more arty. So even the cover on this, you see the cover there, that's not a cover of any of the issues at all. It's a picture I was intended to use because it was basically, it's a bit bonkers. So you can see that it's a skeleton with it's an anatomical 18th century Dutch anatomical drawing from an old book, 18th century book. But for some reason, the artist decided, obviously, thought it's a bit boring just doing drawings of skeletons and things. Put a rhino browsing in the background.
That's right.
Well,
Incredible.
That's true anarchy, I'd say, because you can imagine how stuffy they would have been in the medical establishment in 18th century, Holland or Netherlands. And then on the back, you've got like the reverse. You've got the back of it with the text reversed as well, so that you can kind of see through it. So just trying to think about the whole thing as as not just a reprint, but something that actually stands by itself. I think that was what I was trying to do, and I think it worked really well.
Absolutely, it's really great, and I'm really pleased to have had a part in this as well. And I guess we should say there are still copies available from both yourself and me. So anybody who's watching this, who's interested, you can still get a copy.
Get your orders in now, folks.
Yeah, get your orders in. But you just touched on something that distinguishes what you were doing with Adventures in Reality and what I was doing with Grim Humour, and that's the fact that I think I did dabble here and there, but not to the extent that you did. But you just mentioned the fact you had badges, posters. You did these sideline fanzines as well. There were a lot. These spin-offs. Yeah. So you were really dedicated to a lot of this stuff, and I think this is still important for you, because with the Tales book, obviously I've just been sending out copies of the very limited edition of the hardback, but you wanted some posters and badges to accompany those hardbacks, and I think there was a poster with the Adventures book as well, with the direct orders, or were there? I can't remember. Was there a poster with the Adventures? Some of them, I can't remember.
No, there wasn't a poster. There was a flexi disc. That's it. So what you've got? So this is a hard copy. So you've got this copy of the Attrition Flexi, and that came with one of the issues. But this was actually not a repress. This was actually some spare original ones.
That's right.
So because I had a box left, or a little packet of them left over that I've been hanging on, God knows why, for all these years. So they were actually because they press these in nice quantities, and you always have a few over. So I thought might as well use them. So people with the hardback got it, and with the Tales from the Ghost Town, you get this kind of poster, which is like can you see that? The cover image.
Yep.
That's the cover image. So you can because the cover image on the book, of course, is slightly obscured by the heading and
that's
things.
right.
So you get the whole thing, and also you get a little badge, a little kind of Adventures in Reality button badge, the little small ones, the cool ones, not the nasty shields, but the proper ones.
So my question would be, was that all kind of important for you as well, to have these little add-ons and
Always has. I love it. I always used to include lots of little free gifts with.
Yeah, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
Adventures in Reality. A lot of them came in little bags and things like that. I'll see if I've got one. Actually, I can show you. Bear with me. You
included one, didn't you?
Well, yeah, tea bag with one, and I said that one of the pages was impregnated with coffee, so you could tear it out and pour some hot water in it and have a cup of coffee. Of course, you couldn't. I don't know if anybody ever believed that. But this one here.
Trying to do that, but anyway. Yeah, nice.
Control yourself, Richo.
Sorry.
Yeah. Where was I? Yes. This you're terrible with distracting me. I
know, sorry.
This one here, which is featured in the book, is actually printed on a brown paper bag, which was sealed up, and it had the magazine inside it, because the magazine itself, again, this is all featured in the book, reprinted in the book. This is last one of the original had this. It's a bit faint actually, but you can see. Oh, yeah, we'll get barred by Google. Facebook controls will come in now because of nudity, but it was basically body art. So of course, none of the shops said, "Oh, we can't stop that. You know, it's rude." So I thought plain brown wrapper. Yeah, you know, like you used to get the old porno magazine.
That's right.
Put one of those in there, but printed it like that. And this was a nightmare to print again because it all stuck to the screen print, and I had to do it twice in 2 colours, and they kept ripping and stuff. So it took me forever. But that had a toffee inside it and a load of other things. The toffee actually melted and stuck to it, so it wasn't a great idea. But
but the thought was there.
Thought was there, yeah. And there were tea bags, and one of them had like, just because I used to get sent lots of different singles and things, I used to review them, and then I'll just put one of those inside, so you get like a single.
Nice.
But everyone was different. It was like a lucky bag. Do you remember those?
Yeah,
lucky bags?
Going to the sweet shop.
Sweet shop. It's like that, you know. You never knew what you were going to get.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was inside it.
Sherbet.
There was on the cover. There was no contents list of who's interviewed or whatever. It was just sealed up, so you had to buy it and hope for the best. So it was almost like kind of anti-commercial, really. It was like making it hard for people to kind of be enticed in. They just had to have faith and buy it, and thank God they did. Of course.
But by that point, though, I think people did have faith in what you were doing. So, you know, you did have a kind of loyal. I'm trying to avoid the word market, but you know, you did have regular customers. You did have people who bought every issue, didn't you? And it was a success locally as well for you. So you were a bit of a face, weren't you, on the Coventry scene at the time? So, you know, because of your fanzine. So
I think actually it might be worth talking about kind of local scenes like the Coventry scene.
Yeah, so tell me more about that then. You know, obviously you're part of this. So when you look back at, well, let's start from when you look back at it now, you know, and maybe it relates to what we were discussing earlier. Do you think it was a really, I mean, you also made a really valid point, which is one that many people share, and that's, yes, Coventry wasn't the same as Manchester, London, where else? Liverpool, perhaps. It wasn't like any of the major cities or the capital. So when you look back at it, at what was happening in the mid to late, well, it was late 70s, early 80s. When you look back now, do you think it was a really good time, and you're proud to have been a part of that, or were there some parts that you didn't like? Tell me more about it.
I think I was lucky to be around at the time. You know, there's an element of kind of being born in the right place, right time. Yeah. And each city, if you remember, the kind of regional scenes were definitely a thing. They're not really a thing anymore because you've got this kind of global reach with the internet. But you would have a scene in, you know, Bristol and Manchester and Leeds or whatever. They'd all have their own character, their own bands. And Coventry was the same. Most people think Coventry is Scar Town now. It took us two-tone. It was such a big thing. It kind of eclipsed all the others. But there was quite a strong local scene that sat underneath that, which was much more kind of punky type of stuff. But some quite odd things, like bands like Arliss and Gaza came out of that scene. So quite an eclectic mix. You know, you had reggae bands. You had there's always these hairy kind of rock bands, but we tended to ignore those. But so there was a definite alternative scene, but there was a lot of venues. Coventry's doing really well now. Actually, it's really come back with quite a vengeance. Now there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's quite an arty place these days. In there, it is. Yeah, okay. It was a bit grim back in the 1970s because it was in the recession. It was Margaret Thatcher kind of time, and it was a little bit dangerous, to be honest, as well. So it didn't feel particularly safe a lot of the time. But I think that was true of everywhere, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah. You know, I was just discussing with Mark Perry the other day. You know, I don't know if I mentioned it to him actually. I was discussing it with somebody, but the first ever gig I went to in Canterbury, somebody got glassed in the face in just before the doors even opened. Some skinhead.
Yeah, it used to be. Things used to happen in pubs as well. Used to like glass it
Yeah.
people in the face.
Oh, there was always
Stuff.
violence in there.
Yeah,
It was
violence and
terrible.
fights in pubs.
Yeah.
And the specials covered quite that. You know, in a lot of their songs, they kind of covered that quite well actually.
Absolutely.
So they wrote about what they knew, which was growing up in Coventry. But the local scene I think was very strong. But I think, and the fact that so many fanzines sprung out of it, probably more for a town like Coventry, a small town. I mean, London had more, of course, but for the provincial towns, I don't think any of them had a really big, strong fanzine scene in that kind of way. And it seemed to go hand in hand with the music scene as well. Quite insular in some ways, but a band could do a tour, really, just around the Midlands without stepping outside of that. And there's plenty of venues and they could get some quite decent audiences. All the big bands came through, they could support them. So you can make a little mini career just in that little area.
Absolutely.
It's very hard to do that now, I think, but
I don't know. I think Rainbow Grave are trying, you know.
Their world tour of Birmingham is kicking off, isn't it? So,
Birmingham. So you know, flying the flag for the old days, you know. Still doing it. But no, you're absolutely right. It's what you're describing here it's a very, in many ways, a different world to what exists now. I know you just argued a case for Coventry being a kind of happening place again now, and you said there's music happening again, but obviously it was a very different time back then, and much harder to even, I would argue, to even just get up and do something in the first place. Now we as we said earlier, it's much easier to do things. We've got you can be a non-musician, as indeed I am, and you can still buy the software and fiddle about and come up with a song if you're that inclined. If you're inclined to do so. So I think it is easier to do now, and even then just load it on Bandcamp. So back then, it was a completely different world, and obviously, this is embedded in you. But I want to go on to something that we discussed in a chat a week or so ago, and that was the fact that after you, and again, it relates to something you said a short while ago as well. You mentioned that things tailed off in the late, it was in relation to DIY culture or whatever, tailed off in the mid to late 80s. I continued longer until the 90s, and I would say there were still threads of it continuing longer, but you seemed to disappear for a while. And was it partly because of that? Did you just go off in a different, were you disappointed with everything, or what happened? Because you did sort of go off the radar for a number of years, and it's good that you're back. So, of course,
well, Arnie, I'll be back.
Alan Partridge. So no, it's really good that you've come back, and in a way, it feels like you haven't even been away, really. But what happened in those intervening years? When you did sort of go off the radar, and why did you go off the radar?
So I think you kind of hit on it there, that it felt like it wound up in some ways. There's plenty of people that have continued to do things, and there was still a whole network out there. But I think when I moved down to London, and then things changed, and the people that I were there with all kind of drifted back to their respective hometowns, then Northampton and Coventry and other places, and I was kind of left in London pretty much on my own. So, and I met with my partner Cleo, I'm still with, and we did a band called Dance Naked, which was a very different kind of style of music, more kind of synth goth. I think was probably there, and there's embarrassing photos on Google for anybody to see. But I kind of I had to make some money for a start, so I had to actually realise that I needed, London wasn't a cheap place to live, and I needed to get some money, so I had to kind of compromise my ideals to some extent in that way. But also, I just kind of I went off it for a bit, but I think quite a bit actually, quite a long time. But I think as we were talking about earlier, it never really goes away. It's always there in you, so it's always there in the background, and it resurfaces perhaps later. And it's not just a kind of a midlife crisis nostalgia thing. It's a continuity of because my attitude's never changed really, and even when I've been working in regular jobs, basically I've never really changed the way that I do things. I still do them in the same way that I used to. Hasn't always served me particularly well. Some people, but who cares?
I understand what you mean, though.
Yes, and now I've kind of come back to it a little bit, almost by accident in some ways, in that kind of mentioning these things, and there's still an interest, and I'm surprised and grateful that there is still an interest, but it felt that it was nice to kind of rekindle that, because it's something that I did, so why not? It's still mine, so I'll still do it. And there'll be more stuff, and we have done bits of reissues of some of the bands over the years as well, on different labels in America, in Russia, actually, one of them.
The country that should be
mention that country, so I doubt you'll be able to buy that, though, folks. You might need to be
unfortunately,
and America as well. So
So was your interest still there then? Were you still interested in some of the music that you'd grown up with, and the way it progressed as well?
Definitely was.
Because that's the impression I get, that you were still buying records and buying music. And whatever.
I wasn't one of those people that said, I've grown up now.
It's
been all this stuff, that's the kids,
That's
so,
right.
Because I think our generation never really grew up, did they, properly? So we kind of retained that attitude, and it continues, and you can see it in a lot of the musicians and people that writers and other people there. They kind of retain that nature, really.
Sensibility.
Turning to their parents. So
I don't know how dignified it is at my age, but I get what you mean, and I think maybe it's a good thing as well. Well, of course it's a good thing. It's still burning away at me as well. So, if it's still leading to you doing something that you enjoy, and perhaps some other people enjoy, where's the harm in that? So, and obviously there's an honesty to it as well. You want to do this because you want to do it. It's
no one's going to make a fortune out of this. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's not commercial enough for that. I'm not Ed Sheeran, so I'm not going to be making millions of pounds out of this, or even smaller amounts. But life is about enjoying yourself, isn't it, and doing things.
I believe so. It's a cliche, but absolutely. If you're not enjoying yourself, what's the bloody point?
So I enjoy doing this, so
absolutely.
Why not? And that's kind of why I came back to it, because I was thinking, why? I don't need to move on particularly. It's just I can still enjoy doing this.
It actually brings me on to something else.
Stuff in the background.
I know we'll have to wrap this up shortly, but I know that you want to relaunch your old cassette label as well. So is that right? Or you want to reissue? You want to do some reissues, or you're thinking about this?
So the Adventures in Reality Recordings, which was at the label, did a number of releases on cassettes and some on record.
That's right. A couple of compilations.
That's Sopo, which was quite a big one at the time, because it had SPK and Test Department. It sold quite a lot. So I was thinking of reissuing those. Some of them have come out on vinyl and on different labels, like Vinyl on Demand did one, and some of the Stress cassettes have been reissued in their original form. But I thought it'd be quite nice just to do a reissue of it from the original masters with the original artwork in its original form. So basically, exactly the same, but a limited quantity. So I know it will be for collectors because not many people can play cassettes these days. I'm sure we'll make it available.
But yeah,
but it would be, I think it would be quite nice because again, the cassette is very similar to a fanzine in that when you've got like, here's one here, like okay, so this is the Mummies and Madmen cassette. These are easy to produce yourself, and the means of production control is you. You are your own little company. You do everything on there. Again, it's a non-corporate thing, and I really quite like that.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Very.
I've never been offered a big contract myself, so maybe that would have changed my attitude. But
well,
yeah, it's just nice. It's a nice thing to do. So again, it'll be a small thing, but I think it would be quite nice to do. And then
absolutely,
the musical context bubbling away in the background that will surface.
Yeah. What about the fact that if you're just simply doing reissues, you'll have to get the artist to sort of consent to this, won't you? Or can you?
Yeah. I will. And I always tried to play fair. When I was doing it originally, I paid 50-50 royalties to split them straight down the middle, which is the kind of thing that you do, I know. It was quite unusual, actually.
Profit, but I always give a load of free sort of copies of everything to the artists. They can sell them and they kind of rake in the same money as I do, So that's generally how it works.
Exactly, yeah. Or lose it. So,
yeah. So no,
so it was always a bit surprising when...
I
know we're not going to make money out of this, but so it was always a bit surprising for bands when they got like a check, even for a small amount, because they weren't used to getting that off cassettes. So it would be the same deal, and I think most of them would be happy. The Last Supper one would be most difficult because you've got lots of different bands. You've got things like Muslim Gauls, obviously it's his estate because he's no longer with us.
That's right.
Test Department, quite. Keen on maintaining their copyright. SPK, you might have thought, with Graham Revell being a big, Hollywood kind of soundtrack producer, might have said no, but I got in touch with him and he's saying, yeah, fine, no problem.
Really?
Yeah, he's a really nice.
Kudos to him.
Yeah,
good on
really
him.
nice, and he did remember me.
The one I was SPK with one artist that I was thinking of when I asked you that, but they're going to be like
it's fine.
It's
fine. I got in touch with him. I wanted to get his email, and he said yeah, that's okay, we can do that.
Okay. Good for him. So
he was good.
Yeah, he's done a couple of really good solo albums as well. I think one's based on insects, if I remember, insect recordings.
He's
I can't remember.
Oh yeah, they've done some fantastic stuff. SPK, I think.
Early SPK is really good.
A great band.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you things have revitalised for you. You've kind of found your little niche again. And maybe to wrap this up, obviously you've got the cassette reissue label, perhaps happening in the near future, but what's the next step book wise? Do you have any other plans or any other ideas or nothing?
I think I'm temporarily all out of books actually, because I can't do like them at this kind of pace continually. So I'm obviously open to offers and suggestions. Something was out there to write something about them. I don't want to just be doing more stuff on the kind of Coventry local scene, because I think that's been covered enough now. And the gap was actually probably primarily about the fanzine, so I think I've kind of filled that gap quite effectively now.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
With the book coming out, so it would be something else. I mean, there are obviously things like fiction novels and things like that, which is a different market really, and a very different thing. So short answer is nothing immediately springs to mind, but you never know, because I might have an idea tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it could all start.
Keep the door open,
Keep that door open, yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, I hope something else does happen, because obviously despite my own involvement with both of these books, I think they're great. They look good. They read nicely. I think they're real labours of love, as indeed the fanzines themselves were. They're amazing. They look good, and I think anybody who's interested in post-punk culture, fanzines, whatever, should have these. They should have them. It's a simple.
Yeah, definitely. They're essential.
Yeah, essential. Absolutely.
Essential, yeah. The life is not complete without these.
Exactly. And maybe a final question, just in relation to that. Are you pleased with the response to the book so far?
Yeah, I am. Especially from the people actually were involved in doing the fanzines, either themselves or sometimes writing for them, or friends of them. It's been like overwhelmingly positive, and
That's
a
good.
lot of enthusiasm for that. And there's always delays in production, isn't there? So I'm going to be doing a launch for the soft covers when they come out, because these
Absolutely.
hardcover ones are kind of effectively advanced copies for people that have been lucky enough to get one. But there's some soft copy ones coming, which are just as good. So you do order those.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really good. I've got a few copies of the original fanzines. If we've got time, I can just show you what they
Please
look
do.
like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I prepared them earlier for this.
Okay.
So
let's have a look.
again, if you buy the book, folks, you'll read about these, but you can see them. So this one here, I like the quirkiness of some of these things. So this one here is a first issue one called Damn Latin, which was named after a Fall song and from the Neaton. This is a little checkbook sized thing, handmade, cut out with a little hand stamp on the front of it, kind of John Ball printing outfit, little reviews. He made all these, cut them all up by hand and stayed them together.
Wow.
What a nightmare that would have been. 10 pence. And then it went on later. This is a guy called Phil Clark, who was in a band with actually, and did some others. So this one here, I love this cover. It's like a little cassette, isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's lovely. Really nice.
There's obviously, my own one here, which is I mentioned reality, which is this one here. The two. This is a shared issue again with Dan Latin. So to make the link, there was a thing about doing compilation issues where you team up with another fanzine and you do a joint issue. Same. This was the same kind of thing, but in a little folder. These are our fingerprint on the front.
Wonderful.
So
just in case the police are watching.
Just in case, yeah.
Yeah, could be handy.
The FBI.
Literally.
This one here, a lot of people know, is called Dead Yampy, D-E-D, Yampy, which was like about Coventry drinking culture. It's not even about music.
Yeah, and was that an expression related to drinking? I can't remember what you wrote about it in the book.
Yeah, so be Yampy.
Dead Yampy.
If you're Yampy, you're going a bit crazy, you're kind of a bit over the top.
Oh,
and
okay.
if you're dead Yampy, you're going a lot over the top, usually after having a few drinks or rather a lot of drinks.
Okay.
So
and it's a Coventry expression.
Or
a Midlands expression.
Midlands expression, yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of it before. So
it is.
Okay. Yampy.
And then the kind of star of the show, Coventry-wise, was a fanzine called Alternative Sounds. There's about 18 issues, so there's a few in here. So
Martin Attrition's
here's a couple. And Martin Bose from Attrition produced this, and there was the Something Else TV show featured it as well. It was pretty well known. This one here I like because this is number 16, so it's towards the end of the run, but it's like a newspaper. Look. So,
I think I had a copy of this one myself. But I haven't got most of my fanzines anymore. But that's and it's got a cutout on the front.
Little cutout punk rocker, I think, based on Martin. So
based on Martin,
you can put a little hair on him and dress him up in his bondage trousers.
Oh, lovely,
etc. So I did actually do that, and here he is.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Martin. Hello, Richo. So. Just to close before we finish, this one here, quirkiness, is one called, it's really tiny. It's called Conceptual Jewelry.
Right, okay.
Look how big it is, look.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's really tiny. And it's got photos. It's about a jeweller's shop. which they claim was a conceptual art statement. It wasn't. It's just a jewellery shop.
Yeah.
And you've got this little thing that kind of folds out into like this one here. There's some pictures that they found in a photo booth, which they are claiming is some kind of found art statement.
Of course. No,
that's just
very nice.
That's brilliant. This is the kind of thing that just that people can do that, and I don't know who did it. I don't even know how much it cost. There's no price on it.
No.
I can't even remember how I got hold of it, but it just exists, and that's why it's important to capture these things in a different format, I think.
Yeah, again, this is another example of things that have long gone now. That I know there is some kind of fanzine culture still in existence, and I've been to even local gigs here in Krakow, up until the pandemic started anyway, whereby there would always be a fanzine stall. It's whenever I went to any kind of punk related gig, and usually it's people at least half my age, running these things and going to them, apart from myself and a couple of friends. So there is some kind of fanzine culture still, but obviously it's nothing like what happened back then, and it's a different time now. So I think it's so much easier to produce a fanzine now than back then. I think there was real blood, sweat, and tears involved a lot of the time. A lot of hard work. So
the quantities are a lot smaller now. I think. So I used to sell in like HMV and Virgins and Tower Records, and these are big chains, Rough Trade, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think modern fanzines now, there's one called Eaten Alive, and there's a few of us around that still produce more old style fanzines. They struggle to get that kind of circulation.
Of course,
because I think fanzines were part of that kind of general culture, which sprang up and was very popular, and you can make a living out of it for short periods of time.
Yeah.
Then it got overtaken by the corporate kind of.
It did, yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think obviously this has been very insightful, and I think it's been a really good thing to sort of go back to that period as well, and beyond, of course, and revisit some of this. And I think these books, not only the ones you've done or I've done or we've done, but any of these books dedicated to that period are doing a good job. This period really needs capturing as much as possible, because it will never be repeated. And I think we can at least sort of congratulate ourselves for having played a part in this, and I want to congratulate you for your work here as well. So thank you, Alan, for these books. They're really nice. I feel thankful as well that you agreed to me doing these, and long may it continue. Anybody who's doing this kind of work, I think, more power to them. So
definitely, yeah. These books are dedicated to everybody that's doing stuff like this for themselves.
Absolutely,
and I think either in the past, present, or future. So don't forget, it's out now. You can order it. Soft copies are
absolutely soft covers. Yeah, they'll be available from. I guess you'll have your copies first week of April. Last week of March even. So yeah.
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed.
You should have. Yeah. So I think you'll have your copies last week of March, and you'll be able to start sending out direct orders as soon as you have those, and I'll be doing likewise from here in
brilliant,
sunny and twilight smitten Poland. So I'll be doing exactly that from here, and you'll be doing it from there. So, but otherwise, thanks for chatting, and I'll stop the record button, and I'll stop this.
Okay.
Where is it?
Thanks,